Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome here this morning. Effective on April 1st, 2025, Saskatchewan will now be a carbon tax-free province, the first carbon tax-free province in the nation of Canada. You've heard us say many times before over the last number of years that Saskatchewan is the home to some of the most sustainable products that you can find on Earth. We have in our province the most sustainable oil and gas industry in the world. We have a net zero oil company operating here in Saskatchewan, which we've had the opportunity to highlight many times. I'm aware of no other net zero oil company operating anywhere across North America or anywhere on Earth for that matter. Our methane emissions in the oil and gas sector have dropped some 72% since 2015. I'm not aware of another industry globally that has a record of dropping their methane emissions by some 72% just in the last decade. Potash, 35% of the world's potash comes from this province, and it's produced with half of the emissions of our next largest competitors in other areas of the world. We also produce about 15 to 20% of the world's uranium, high-grade uranium, high-quality uranium to be used in clean nuclear power in many other countries around the world, including Canada and the United States of America. And we want to produce more of that product as we have a number of additional uranium mines that are going through and waiting for their federal regulatory approval so that they can begin construction sooner rather than later. We have a net zero copper mine that is under construction to provide minerals or elements not only of today, but elements that are crucial to powering our future right here in our province. I would say you point back to the opportunity we had at COP28 in Dubai to highlight not only all of these industries, but to highlight the industry that really is the spinal cord of the economy in Saskatchewan, and that is our agricultural industry, where the Global Institute for Food Security released a study that pointed towards the comparison of how our agri-food products are produced in Saskatchewan relative to our next 6 or 7 largest competitors globally. And what they found was our canola and our wheat are produced with a 65% lower carbon content than the next largest 7 competitors around the world. Peas and lentils were off the charts with respect to just how sustainably produced they were here in Saskatchewan, and by extending the technology and the innovation that we're using to other areas in North America and other areas of the world, we are producing more sustainable food due to the efforts of Saskatchewan companies. So as Canadians, where do we find ourselves today? As Canadians, we find ourselves in the midst of a federal election campaign. And given that the 2 major federal parties and their leaders have realized the very harmful impacts of the carbon tax, the harmful impact to families, to our investment environment, industrial investment environment, and ultimately the harmful impact in reducing the number of jobs and opportunities that Canadians have, and more generally, the harmful impact that it has to our economic growth in not just this province, but across the nation of Canada, we see each of those leaders now announcing plans to eliminate at least some of the cost of the carbon taxation policy that we've been subjected to for which will be 6 years, this April the 1st. So in that light, and taking that cue from the federal leadership candidates, Saskatchewan is taking the lead in our nation by reducing the industrial carbon tax rate charged in our province to 0. The industrial carbon tax rate, or the OBPS, is the quiet carbon tax. It's the carbon tax that we as Canadians don't always see, but we certainly all pay. We're in a very uncertain time as well as Canadians. We are facing as Canadians potential tariffs and some implemented tariffs in the steel and aluminum industry already today from our largest trading partner, the United States of America. We also in this province and throughout the Midwest, the prairie provinces are facing today the 100% tariff on canola and peas and pork and seafood in our Atlantic areas, the Chinese tariff that's been imposed due to a policy decision, in fairness, by our federal Liberal and supported by the NDP governments, a policy decision to protect the EV industry, the Canadian EV industry, which is at this point in time not employing anywhere near the number of people that are being employed in the canola industry and the other aforementioned industry. So what we are doing as a province is we're taking very decisive steps to ensure that our industries in Saskatchewan are more competitive and to protect the jobs today in those industries and protect the jobs that we want to attract in those industries into the future. And most importantly, protecting Saskatchewan families from inflationary costs due to unnecessary taxation. The decision that we're making today will foster an economic environment where industries can feel confident to make further investments into our province, and I would say into our nation, to increase the production that they have, to add value to the production that they have, to protect the jobs that are here today, and to protect the very families that are creating income from those jobs in industries across Saskatchewan. As I mentioned earlier, Saskatchewan is producing the most sustainable products that you can find on earth today. Those products are benefiting not only Saskatchewan families from an economic perspective, but by extension, very much are impacting Canadian families in a very positive way. And so we want to create an environment where we can create more of those sustainable jobs, Canadian sustainable jobs right here in Saskatchewan. Making our province a carbon tax-free province will provide us with the opportunity to do just that. So our ask on behalf of, I would say, not only Saskatchewan residents, but largely on behalf of Canadians, is that all federal leaders running in this federal election would support the position that we have put forward. Removing unnecessary taxes where you can, attracting investment, and creating more Canadian jobs and more Canadian opportunity in areas like Saskatchewan, where we have the most sustainable food, fuel, food, and fertilizer that you can find on earth. And our ask of the federal governments is to allow provinces to regulate in this space, regulate in this area without imposing their federal backstop. This will further strengthen, and I would say provide us with the opportunity to further unite as Canadians by supporting the economic diversity that we have in various provinces and various regions of Canada, and will provide us then collectively with an opportunity to grow economically and to grow as Canadians. This is an opportunity that I would say that the federal leadership candidates have to unite Canadians further, to make life more affordable for each and every Canadian and each and every Canadian family. Thank you.
Why this measure was in last week's budget, because it is a taxation measure as such, and I guess what effect it might have on this year's budget. I don't think it's as described by the opposition, but there is a vote for the effect.
Yeah, so what we are doing here today is deferring the OBPS program, and we feel it'll have an immaterial effect on the budget, but we will have a consultation process with industry on how we would be able to exit that program. We have always stood, I think, from day one against this tax. We don't think it is in any way an environmental tax, but ultimately is, preventing in many ways investment and enhancing the inflationary costs that we are experiencing as Canadians. So we've always been against it and looking for ways, including taking it to the Supreme Court of Canada, supported by 8 other provinces and one opposition party in our effort there. What we are doing here today is really taking our cue from federal leaders as we find ourselves in a national election campaign. You've seen, the 2 main parties, both federal leaders have came out and made decisions with respect to reducing the consumer carbon tax, and one party, the Conservative Party, has went further and said that they would also reduce the OBPS tax. Taking that cue, what we are asking all leaders to do is to be clear on what they would do with the OBPS tax, and ask them to put that in the provincial scope of regulations. That's what we've always asked for. We in Saskatchewan said we would probably reduce that to 0. Other provinces may not. Other provinces may freeze it at a current amount or some select amount. Other provinces may actually have it escalate over time, depending on the industry and depending on the opportunities that they have. Herein lies our, we're not only diverse as people across Canada, but we're diverse economically in how we generate our wealth. And I think that's very obvious right now as we have tariff discussions from multiple countries. So really, as we've always been against this particular tax, we think it's ineffective, we think it's inflationary. However, we're really taking our cues from federal leaders over the last number of days as we see them starting to zero out this tax in different ways. What we're talking about today, the consumer carbon tax, is there's decisions that have been made there by both leaders. The OBPS, or the heavy emitter tax, is the leaders need to be clear on their position on that. This is the quiet carbon tax. This is one that you don't always see, but we all pay.
Okay, but what budget effect will it have? And I guess I'm curious as to why a budgetary item would be taken, the cue would be taken from another political event as opposed to what the budget process is, which is describing our needs. So I guess we need to know how it's going to affect this year's budget has pretty narrow surplus, and where do we go from here? Where do we make up the money? A lot of this, I think, is going for things like SMRs in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't assume that there's money that needs to be made up. What I would say is that this is a deferral, and we'll consult with industry on how we exit the program. And so some of those details would come out, days and weeks into the future when we understand what that exit would actually look like. But the important thing, and I think what this means to Saskatchewan residents, and if this was adopted by all the federal leaders that potentially could win, would mean the same for Canadian residents, is you would pay less, starting with your power bills. And it's very evident, and Minister Harrison can speak to how that is very visible in Saskatchewan, but it's not visible in all areas of Canada on your power bills. But it also would affect the gas price. It also would affect your grocery price and everything that we purchase. This, again, I say, is the quiet carbon tax. It's the carbon tax that we don't all see, but we certainly all pay. Do you want to just explain how Saskatchewan is a little bit different with how it is viewed in our power bills?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Premier. This really is this is the hidden carbon tax. This is the shadow carbon tax that I think has been advocated by some for it to continue to be higher. What we are doing and what people are going to see on their bills as of April the 1st, Saskatchewan ratepayers, SaskPower customers are not going to be paying that carbon tax portion that had been broken out on their SaskPower bills. So that is for individuals, for households, for businesses, and this has a real impact. I mean, we're talking hundreds of dollars per year, depending on power use for either households or for companies. A good example actually is Everest is a great example of this, where we made an announcement about a week and a half ago, a company that is facing a 25% tariff. That because of that tariff, there are literally hundreds of jobs in the city of Regina directly at stake, thousands indirectly at stake because of the importance of that industry. A 25% tariff. This is going to save that company, for example, millions of dollars per year in compliance payments, which is going to put them in a position to continue employing the hundreds of people in Regina and the thousands that are in that associated industry. We've been working closely with the company on how we speed up purchases from the Crowns. We announced that a week and a half ago. Some of you were at that announcement and covered it. It was very well received, and I think you're going to see later today, as we go forward, economic stakeholders talking about the impact of this for them, whether that be individual employers, whether that be households, whether that be other stakeholders in the government realm, organizations like SARM, for example. This has a direct impact on the ability of our ratepayers, for SaskPower, our customers, to realize genuine savings. And it's a position that we've taken for many years. And I think that is probably going to be the most obvious indication initially. People are going to see that line on their SaskPower bill, which is federal carbon tax, is no longer going to be paid.
When it comes to OBPS as a line item in the budgets under electricity sector revenues, it comes in at $346.6 million. So if we're deferring that, we have a $12.2 million surplus. Does that mean that we now have a 300?
Yeah, there's the entirety of the conversation, and this is why we need to engage with industry on how we are going to exit this program. Herein lies the opportunity. Pardon me?
But if we no longer have that source of revenue, you said that there's going to be an immaterial impact. I'm just hoping you can flesh it out.
And again, I'll have to talk to you about that once we have discussed with industry on how we actually would be able to exit this program. The much more material impact on eliminating this hidden carbon tax, or at least providing the opportunities for provinces to regulate in this space, is lower cost for families. That's the immediate material impact that Canadians would notice and that Saskatchewan residents would notice. Secondary, but equally important to that, was be an improvement in the investment environment in this province. Minister Harrison had spoken to the impacts on a company like Everest, that employ many not only USW BTU workers directly, but indirectly many across the province. And again, EBRAS, with their electric arc furnace, is producing some of the most sustainable steel that you can find on earth, and recycling cars from not only Western Canada, but the Midwestern U.S. as well. Integral part of our North American economy in what they do. And so we'll have more details on those discussions in the days and weeks ahead. But what we're announcing here today will have a very real impact on Saskatchewan families starting on April the 1st. Saskatchewan in the investment environment and protecting the jobs that are here today starting on April the 1st. And as we find our way through the number of weeks consulting with industry on how we can actually exit the program, then we'll have more details on that.
Can you expand on that? Because it might take the form of an exit fee, a transition fee to industry, or something. I don't know how this goes with.
I don't understand the question.
Someplace along the line, there would be the need to make up the revenue within budget. That's what Al referred to, $380 million, whatever it is. The opposition has another number, but I don't know if it's correct. Would industry be required to pay for some of those costs related to this?
Well, I think you get back to the very function of costs across government. And in Saskatchewan, we have a power company that is owned by the people of this province, and our very goal and focus has been to deliver reliable, affordable power. We're making all of the decisions that we can in this space to ensure that is the case. Yes, as we find our way through the next number of decades, how we generate our power, how we deliver our power is going to change. And we're going to need more of it because we're a growing province and our electrical needs are higher, whether that be because we do see some things like electrical cars coming into our centers, or whether it's like we see happening throughout the province with a new potash mine being built, or a new uranium mine being built, or a new copper mine being built, or a new canola crush facility being built. And so there is an entirety of the conversation here on just what our future looks like in this province and what our future looks like as Canadians from an investment attraction environment. And I would say that this quiet carbon tax doesn't help that in any way. And we're asking the federal leaders to allow provinces to regulate in this space. That's the ask here today. And I think, in fairness, that ask, if it was granted, you are going to see a much more robust investment environment across this nation, and collectively a much more robust investment environment in Canada. There is an opportunity here for federal leaders to unite Canadians even further. Second to that, and I would say equally, if not more important, is you'll see a greater degree of affordability for Canadian families. In Saskatchewan, you'll see it on April the 1st, but across Canada, we could see it as well if you eliminate not only the consumer carbon tax, but allow the provinces to regulate in this space of the output-based or the heavy emitter carbon tax.
Further, I think people would really like some clarity on whether or not this will result in a deficit. So if I'm saying yes or no, we're going to have a deficit budget now because of this.
Listen, we have a balanced budget, or a $12 million surplus that's introduced into the legislature, and we have every intent on delivering that throughout the year.
But I guess how are you, like, you're saying you're no longer going to collect the fee. You don't have that revenue anymore. How are you going to operate at a surplus then?
And we're going to have those details in the days ahead. As we go through the consultation with industry, understanding, how the dollars flow, not only through Saskatchewan, but how they flow, even through other levels of government and through other industries across Canada. There is a much larger and much more complex answer to what the exit of this policy and this tax, a hidden tax on Canadians, will actually mean. All of it positive if we're able to regulate it at the provincial level. As I said, in Saskatchewan, we would look at bringing that to zero, and are going to do so on April the 1st. Across Canada, you might see a different answer to that. You might see the freezing of that rate. You might see some might even be escalating it. Some might escalate it in certain industries, but not others. And herein lies the opportunity for us as a very diverse, even culturally, nation, but also diverse economically, to make very good regional decisions that are in the best interest collectively of all Canadians. There's an opportunity here for both of our national leaders that can become Prime Minister to be very clear in this space.
Why not have those consultations first? Why not have the answers available for people before announcing this policy change?
Well, I think we're taking our cue from the federal leaders as they start to back up on this policy to, not even go to zero as part of their policy, but turn the regulatory authority over to the provinces. Provinces know best when it comes to how to regulate largely natural resources, but also how to ensure that in their region of Canada, we're making for the most affordable environment for families that we represent. And I think, in fairness, we've done well over the last number of decades, not just the decade and a half government. I'd say a nonpartisan statement. We've done well in Saskatchewan in ensuring that we are the most affordable place to live in Canada, and we want to continue for that to be the case. I would say that more recently we've also done well in attracting investment, and this is going to even increase those opportunities if we're able to make that investment environment more attractive.
Do you have a plan and an understanding of how this is going to work first before making this announcement, before making this decision?
Well, I think it's morphed over time. As when this first came in, you'll remember it was going to go to $50 and would never go higher by the federal government's comments. Then they announced that they were musing about it going substantially higher, and then it was going up to $170. And herein lies, I think, some of the direction that we would take from industry is on, what does this look like going forward? For an investment environment, what does it look like going forward to ensure that you're competitive? And for us, our interest is to preserve the jobs and opportunity in Saskatchewan communities. And so that is the discussion that we're going to have with industry is how could we exit this program in a very positive way for Saskatchewan people and Saskatchewan opportunity. What we find ourselves in today and why we're here today is really taking our cue from the federal leaders who have all made steps, taken steps in backing up, at least on the consumer side. But what we're asking for them to do is to not even back up on the quiet carbon tax, the heavy emitter carbon tax, but allow provinces to regulate in this space.
Don't you think done a little bit on this? I mean, it's 5 weeks away till we find out who's going to be the next federal leader. One leader is saying to get rid of pre-industrial emitter tax. The other leader is saying that this is something that we need.
No, I think the question is very pertinent today. Canadians should know where each leader is on the quiet carbon tax, on the heavy emitter carbon tax. Are you going to give the regulatory authority to the provinces and allow them to regulate in this space? Are you going to set it to zero? Are you going to freeze it? Or are you going to increase it indefinitely over time? That's an important question, I think, that Canadians want to know the answer to as we find our way to that election day in Canada. Very important question. We have so many challenges as Canadians today. We in Saskatchewan are facing 100% tariffs on some of our largest agricultural products. Deep impact into the Saskatchewan economy. We in Saskatchewan, like other Canadians, are facing, the potential threat and already have in place tariffs on steel and aluminum. And that's why we've made decisions to advance some procurement in the Crown utility space to support our steel industry in Saskatchewan. But very much as Canadians are facing, a time of uncertainty. This is an opportunity for federal leaders running to be our Prime Minister, to be very clear with Canadians on what the costs they're going to impose on Canadians are, whether the Canadians can see them or not.
No, we already effectively dictate where the money from the OBPS goes. There's a tech fund that gets $70 million. There's the Clean Electricity Transition Grant that gets $140 million. And then there's the Small Modular Reactor Investment Fund that gets another $140 million. So we already effectively dictate where that money goes, and it goes into things like modular reactors, like et cetera. So.
Yeah, and we're suggesting as we find our way through time, and this is what we're going to consult with industry, is what is the impact of paying those dollars on the competitiveness of your industry? What is the opportunity for additional investment in your industry if that fee isn't there? And so this is exactly the answers to some of the questions that we have is if we are going to exit this program, make Saskatchewan industries more competitive, our investment attraction, our investment environment more attractive, and save Saskatchewan families money, what does that look like going forward?
If I could, Premier, if I could too.
Sure.
Maybe I'll just add to that answer as well. What you're forgetting is that the hidden carbon tax, the industrial carbon tax, is the national government forcing customers of SaskPower to pay $100+ a month per household, millions of dollars per year for individual companies. At SaskPower, we can manage without the industrial carbon tax in place. We can manage what our future is going to look like at SaskPower without any of these resources. This has been forced on us, and it's being forced on taxpayers to pay literally hundreds of dollars per year because of the Liberal government for very little benefit. So that is what we are talking about here today. That is going to be gone. that is going to be off your bill. If you are a SaskPower customer, you are not paying that charge that you have been paying now for 6 years, which is about, at this point, well over 10% of your bill right now is the federal carbon tax. That would be going under the current plan up to about 25% in the next few years. That is no longer going to be paid by individuals here in this province. Anybody who is a customer of SaskPower, whether you're an individual, whether you are a business owner, a small business owner, whether you're a large business owner, you are not going to be paying that carbon tax. That is what people are going to see today and going forward.
I was just going to maybe add that, at least that helps answer your question a little bit as well, is federal leaders do need to be clear, because in Saskatchewan on our power bills, it's one of the few places where this hidden carbon tax is actually not hidden. It's very evident on your power bill. And that's in excess of 10% of your power bill today, roughly. Federal leaders need to be clear on what that is going to look like for Saskatchewan residents, and it's hidden on other products, but what it's going to look like into the future. And to go up to $170 a ton, it's going to look like, a 24, 26% of your power bill in years into the future. It's also on food, it's also on fuel, but it's just not evident in those products. And so this is the hidden carbon tax. We don't all see it. You do on your power bill in Saskatchewan, one of the few places, but we certainly all pay it. And so what we are asking the federal government to do is to, allow us as regional leaders, as provincial leaders, to regulate in this space. That's always been our ask. Always, and I think largely you'll see agreement among other provinces for this ask as well. Alberta, for example, they had a carbon tax implemented before the federal government did even, and it was simply around a tech fund that was flowing, dollars back into certain investments in that industry. It should be governed as a natural resource application where the provinces are actually regulating in this space. And it might be different across the nation, but it will be more advantageous for the residents that live in that province, and it'll be more advantageous for the investment environment that we're trying to provide. And therein lies, I think, collectively as Canadians, it'll be more advantageous and strengthen our national economy and our national opportunities.
There's small modular nuclear development as well, because part of the OBPS was looking to compose that and get that spread those $20 million a year. What does that do to the future of small modular nuclear?
Well, that is the answer to that question is years out. As you know, we've made a commitment to extend the life of the current capacity we have to generate power here in the province, and that's simply focusing on affordable and reliable power for Saskatchewan residents and the industries that are here today and the industries that we're attracting. Again, this is a very much a connected conversation to the pressures of tariffs, the opportunities that we have as we move forward in the investment environment that is here, that does and is somewhat dependent on our access to reliable power. You're seeing those challenges in some other areas of North America and Canada as well. So we, very much have, I wouldn't say shifted our focus, but have increased the focus into ensuring that first and foremost, we have reliable, affordable power for Saskatchewan residents and the industries that are here today and the industries that are going to operate tomorrow. We are also going to continue to lower our emissions in how we generate that power over time, but we're going to do it in a sensible way that isn't going to triple or quadruple the electricity costs that we have. That isn't what Saskatchewan residents want, is a quadrupling of the power rates that they have. They want the lights to go on when they flip the switch, and that's what we're focused on.
Are you concerned it might affect the industry's ability to invest in countries requiring some form of industrial gas?
Not at all. I've heard the conversation around Europe, potential hindrances there. Europe trades with the United States of America. Europe trades with India. Europe trades with China. Many, many other countries. The European Union countries trade with all of them. I myself will be in the European Union next week, actually advancing some of the trade opportunities and the investment opportunities that come out of Europe as well. So I don't foresee that as any type of hindrance whatsoever, because European Union countries not only trade with Canada today, but trade with many other countries around the world that don't have a heavy emitter carbon tax in place, a hidden carbon tax.
Speaking of Europe, last night we went to bed and there was new tariffs coming on autos. We wake up this morning, Trump says Canada and Europe do anything that affects the American economy. He'll then use large-scale tariffs. I'm not sure what that is, 25%. How much of this decision was made specifically counter to unstable, self-proclaimed genius in the White House?
I don't know. I looked at the last part of that statement where, the claim was American has been the best friend to Canada and Europe, and I don't know that it feels like that recently. That being said, and we've taken this approach from the very early days, despite all of the rhetoric coming out of the president and the White House recently, despite the challenging situation that we have in North America, not only with the threat that are imposed in the case of the steel and aluminum industry, tariffs on our products, and the auto industry coming now. Despite the counter action or the retaliatory tariffs that we've seen on China, which have a significant impact on the Saskatchewan ag industry, the U.S. is our largest trading partner. And when the dust settles on this conversation, they probably are still going to be our largest trading partner. And so we've taken a somewhat different approach of, education, advocating, but also being firm. With our largest trading partner, the United States of America. I didn't hear any comments on the products that we have and that are important to Saskatchewan jobs and families last night, and so that was the first thing that I did notice. There's been, maybe a different approach taken by leaders across Canada, and we'll see how this all works out as we find our way through what is a very difficult conversation for all working people wherever you might live in Canada. And I think really speaks to the other conversation that we're having today is whether you're governments or running in a national campaign, should be very clear with Canadians on making every effort to make life more affordable here in a very uncertain time, because some of the tariffs and imposed tariffs are not going to make life more affordable. Some of the counter tariffs that are already in place from the Canadian perspective, or potential counter tariffs that will come into place, will not make life more affordable for Canadian families. And so we should be controlling what we can control. And the hidden carbon tax is one that we can control. And so what we're asking the federal government to do is to turn that regulatory power over to the subnational leaders.
We're just going to ask you about Figure Daniel Smith going to the States, I think today as well, speaking to the American People Court.
Okay.
She's faced an accusation of being a traitor for doing that, and she spoke about this yesterday in Alberta, saying she's fighting back against that notion. Just wondering what you think about her going to the United States.
No, she's, I think, one of the strongest advocates we have in Canada right now on, what the path forward looks like and what a North American trading environment should look like, despite all of the rhetoric that's happening. And, I go back to, Jean Chrétien's statements that you can't be smart when you're angry. We do need to be smart as Canadians right now. And I know there's a lot of anger and substantial anger for good reason. But we need to be smart, and we need to take care of ourselves in everything that we do as leaders. And Premier Smith, I think, certainly has taken probably a similar approach that we have as well here, is using the contacts that she have, whoever they might be, to advocate and to educate on just how integrated our economy is. I said earlier, Evraz Steel is recycling most of the cars, not just in Western Canada, but throughout the Midwestern states. I don't know where those cars go if Evraz ceases to operate for even a period of time. Never mind, all of the USW jobs, never mind all of the indirect jobs in and around Regina, never mind the integration with all of the other steel companies in Saskatoon and across Canada, across the province and Canada and the continent. Is a very integrated industry on so many fronts. So, I commend not only Premier Smith, but all premiers that are doing their level best to engage with the contacts that we have. And when we have a Council of Federation meeting, there's 13 leaders on that call. Collectively, they have a lot of phone numbers in their Rolodex, and they're all reaching out to everyone that they have, whether they be policymakers, industry people down there, and the goal is to advocate and to educate as to the importance of the trade relationship that we have, despite the rhetoric, and what it needs to look like into the future. And that's where we're working our way back from. Is we want that free and fair trading environment, and we're going to try to make decisions to get there. There are going to be some tough ones along the way, potentially, though.
Can you explain, I guess, what's stopping the federal government from imposing the federal backstop on the industrial units?
That's our ask, is that they don't. Our ask is that they allow the provinces to regulate in this space. It's always been our ask, and I think many, if not all, other provinces would have a similar ask, is to allow the provinces to regulate in this space. Don't impose the federal backstop. It would be the federal backstop or the requirement to, to increase the carbon tax to that $170 rate or higher. That would cause power bills in Saskatchewan to go up not only 10% where they are today, but ultimately in the future to go up 25% for, simply, no reason outside of to make life more unaffordable.
So I guess you're saying that this is a carbon tax-free province, but you're also asking the federal government to not impose the backstop? Like,
Yes.
I'm trying to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, on April 1st, we're going to move forward. We're going to defer the requirement for carbon tax payments. What Saskatchewan families will notice is it won't be on their SAS power bill. We're going to consult with industry on charting, what an exit to this program might look like. And our ask of all federal leaders is to allow provinces to regulate in this space. Don't impose the backstop, and let's unite and grow stronger together. Let's grow a stronger economy in Saskatchewan, which benefits all Canadians. Let's grow a stronger economy in Alberta, Nova Scotia, and Ontario, which benefits all Canadians.
So what if they,
quiet tax, are you gonna have anything in place to make sure the companies don't just keep their prices the same and have it flow through to consumers?
Again, all of that will be part of the discussion on a deferral, but I would say in general, some are global prices, some are not global prices, but in very, very competitive industries.
So what happens if the feds do impose federal backstop? Would you defy it? Would you challenge it in court, or what would happen in that kind of?
Well, we've challenged it before, and we're always looking for opportunities to change it again, as we don't think it's a proper policy, at least not for Saskatchewan in its current form, to be raised to $170 a ton, which would put, in the neighborhood of 25% plus on each and every family's power bill in the province, never mind the increase at the fuel pumps that you don't see, never mind the increase at the grocery store, which you don't see. And that's true across Canada. And so that's some of the discussion that we're going to have with industry. But the important thing, I think, for Saskatchewan residents and our ask is for all Canadians to experience is to not have that hidden carbon tax, not have to pay it at the grocery store, at the fuel pumps, or in Saskatchewan's case, not have to see it on your power bill. And they won't on April the 1st.
Last couple questions.
Is there gonna continue to be the carbon tax line item on staff power bill? Just like this one?
We're going through some of that in the advent to April the 1st, but it wouldn't be necessary if it's not to be paid. It's not a rebate. It won't be charged. Good deal.
Thanks, everybody.